Alrighty, here we go. Clayton, JMart with me. It's a little strange, but we got the college football playoffs are resuming tonight as this is the first year of this bracket, trying to figure out when the games are going to start. But we got one tonight. So we got Notre Dame, Penn State tonight, and then Ohio State and Texas tomorrow. JMart and I already on Tuesday went through both of these games. What I wanted to do today with Clayton on board is to go through the prop bets, see if we can find a way to make some money. Kind of feels like the Super Bowl with all the different prop bets, a standalone game, getting down to the Final Four. So I can't say I'm super excited that Notre Dame's facing Penn State because I had Boise State and Georgia. But nonetheless, here we are. Clayton, what are your thoughts on the game? JMart was favoring Notre Dame. The line is favoring Notre Dame. Most analysts are favoring Notre Dame. Where are you at with this?
So I do understand why everyone's favoring Notre Dame. I think momentum plays a lot into it in these playoffs, as you can see with Ohio State, how they've been playing. But I actually like Penn State coming into this game. I think that Notre Dame is very run-focused, and I think Penn State's kind of got the advantage in controlling that. And then when you look at Penn State on the offensive end, what's happened in the last couple games is that they've managed to slow down Tyler Warren, which last game he still had 2 touchdowns, 60 yards, but he's obviously done more throughout the season. But when they do that, the run game just gets going way more. They've got 2 really talented backs, so I think Penn State's a lot more favored than most people are saying.
And they do get the extra day of rest. So, all right, let's go through the individual guys, and we'll start with Penn State's defense and focus on Notre Dame's offensive players. Riley Leonard is a hard guy to, with his passing yards. You see 164 passing yards and then 53.5 rushing yards. Gives Ravens fans a Lamar Jackson feel. Although Riley Leonard will not be confused with Lamar Jackson, he is going to try to run and get those first downs tonight. So let's start with him. JMart, over under 164.5 passing yards and then 53.5 rushing yards.
I see the over in the passing and the under on the rushing. I think that they do know, just like they did against Georgia, that they're going to have to throw the ball to win the game. If you watch the first quarter of the Georgia game, they threw a lot more than they normally do. And then the second quarter, they started mixing in a lot of QB designed runs that Georgia really couldn't contain. I do think Penn State will be able to contain Leonard a little more. I think their pass rush is a little better. I think their front 7 is a little better. And I think because of that, Notre Dame knows this, and they're just going to try and beat him outside with guys like Faison, Mitchell Evans. These are the kind of people I see shining in this game. And I think Leonard's going to have to throw a lot more to win it.
You agree with that, Clayton?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the only way that Notre Dame should play this game is through the air primarily. While I still think that Penn State's got the edge, I think that line is a lot kind of based on how Riley Leonard threw the ball last game. It's not that he necessarily threw badly, but he did only have, I think, 90 yards. So I think that plays into the line. But just given, the personnel of Penn State's run defense, I think they're going to throw the ball a bit more, and I think that's an affordable line for them, even if it doesn't go in their favor.
I agree. I feel like it would have been really interesting to see what Notre Dame's second half, that first possession, what the game plan was going to be. They were up 13-3. Once they got the kick return for a touchdown, they just took the air out of the ball and said, hey, can we end this game as fast as possible? So I think that's a good point, Clayton, as far as the line is probably a little low considering he only had to throw for 90 yards last week because they just had the game in hand. All right, so if that's the case and you guys like the over with Riley's passing yards, I'm assuming he's got 2 main targets. I say that, and then we'll look up tonight, and there'll be 3 other guys catching balls. But the 2 guys he's been looking for is tight end Mitchell Evans, who Mel Kiper's got projected as a 2nd or 3rd round draft pick, one of the better tight ends in the league. Only 25.5 receiving yards, but 3.5 receptions. I find that, is he going to really have 4 catches for 24 yards? So it feels like I would err on the side of receiving yards for him instead of catches. Clayton, what are your thoughts on Mitchell Evans?
Yeah, I can't say too much about the receptions, but I think given how I assume Notre Dame will play this game offensively, I think that's very affordable for him, receiving yards. Notre Dame always seems to have a really talented tight end that they can go to within their offense throughout the past 5 years, really. So I think that's really affordable.
JMart, thoughts on him? And then Faison's only 3.5 catches and 42.5 yards. Those are clearly – they got the great Greenhouse, I think is his name, as a senior. He's another target. But those 2 are Leonard's favorite targets. How do you see Evans and Faison's props?
Yeah, I think just especially with Mitchell Evans having such a juiced receptions line, having 3.5 to cover like 25 receiving yards, I think the books are preparing for him to also cover that line. Again, I do think he runs a lot of those short hitches that you see Travis Kelce run a lot for the Chiefs, but regardless, I think they're going to find a way to get him involved. He's kind of a game-breaking kind of build that works really well. And then again, having a second option in Faison that plays complete opposite style. He's a lot smaller, a lot quicker. I think they're both going to operate pretty comfortably. I do like Faison's receptions a little more at 3.5 than 42.5 receiving yards. I think he can get 4 receptions before the yards line.
I would say that's where the ball goes on third down, right? Like that's pretty much where he's looking.
Yeah, because he knows he can get open on his own, but he's also really good. Just give him the ball and let him in space trying to develop a play by himself. I do just think that they're going to script a lot more plays for him than we saw against Georgia, and he was still phenomenal against Georgia.
So when I look at the rushing props for Notre Dame, listening to you guys, and then you hear Love is I know everybody's banged up, but Love, the premier back for Notre Dame, is banged up. He is going to play, but the rushing yards, I know Penn State was fantastic against Genty. They suffocated them, but I don't know how Notre Dame wins this game unless they can get over on the rushing yards here. Jadarian Price, 48.5 rushing yards, and then Jeremiah Love, 35.5 rushing yards. Clayton, why are they so low? I know you're telling me that Riley Leonard's going to throw the ball. Penn State's great up front, but if those two, talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think it's just because how strong of a run defense Penn State's got, but also given the injury rumors about Love, I think that's kind of bringing down his line as well. I think they'll be able to control the ball. Penn State's defense will be able to control the ball on first and second down when it comes to run plays. I think they're going to have to force Riley Leonard to throw the ball downfield a little more if they want to win this game. If you look at his passing averages, I think last game against Georgia, he only averaged about 4 yards per throw. So it's a lot of more check down, short pass stuff. And that's what Penn State's going to have to force if they want to win. So I think those lines make sense. I think Love probably goes under. I just don't think he'll have as many carries. Price is one I can't really speak on as much. I think it's an affordable line for either one of them, but I think he'll get a lot more carries and we'll be able to get to that line no matter how the game's really going.
I thought Price ran hard against Georgia. I was impressed with some of his runs. I have a hard time, though, thinking how Notre Dame's going to win this game if they're not going to get these rushing yards over JMart. Like, if they're leading at the end of the game, that feels like, I don't know, am I missing something here? Because how's Notre Dame win, but both of these running backs don't get over their total?
No, I mean, if you add up those two lines, it comes out to 80 rushing yards total out of the running backs. They're having Riley Leonard have more rushing yards than both the running backs, which just simply isn't going to happen. They don't run enough designed runs for Riley Leonard for that to make sense. And I think running directly into a Penn State defense that tackles really hard is just kind of stupid to try and do with Riley Leonard when you have Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love. So the way I see it is like with Love, that line's absurdly low because of injury risk, but he had injury risk going into the Indiana game, and he broke out a 98-yarder on the first play. I do think that this is one of those where both running backs could go over, but I would probably personally lean Jeremiah Love just because it's one of those lines that will probably go over if he plays, and if he doesn't play, it just voids is the way I kind of see that line.
Is there a stat line where both these guys just do struggle, but Riley Leonard's good enough and they win this game 20-17? Like, is that possible?
I truly have a hard time seeing a world where Riley Leonard is able to do enough by himself without any running back support to put Notre Dame on their back against a defense like Penn State. I think he's going to get sacked a few more times than he did against Georgia, which wasn't reflected in the rushing yard lines. And again, they still ran the ball pretty well and had a comfortable lead most of the game. So you didn't need Leonard to kind of like have those drives down the field all by himself.
Yeah.
I kind of want to add to that, if you don't mind. I think they're going to force Riley Leonard to run out of the pass game a lot more, which is why that line is so high. But I don't necessarily think that he can hit the yards. I think it's more they're expecting him to have more, I guess, rushes in total just because Penn State will probably force him to scramble a few times. But like Jack was saying, I don't think that's very affordable for him against such a good Penn State running defense.
And I agree. I think that the best bet out of probably any of Leonard's props are just rush attempts. I think he's going to in general, I don't know where they're going to have the line. I'd assume around 12.5. I would probably take that line. I'd probably take it all the way up until at least 15 just with again, receivers might not get open. He'll just have to like try and do stuff on his feet. I don't trust the yard number to really reflect how often he's like scrambling, because I do think there will be like 2 or 3 sacks here, but I do see like the rush attempts being a pretty safe one.
Yeah, after watching the Boise State game, it felt like, man, there's a couple holes in the Penn State secondary. And Boise, like, I really put the game on Genty. Like, Madsen made a couple really big throws, and they just couldn't establish the run game. Feels like Penn State got lucky because they're getting, on the other side of the bracket, both of those quarterbacks have the, all-world speed on the outside. I think that would be challenging to Penn State, as you saw Oregon put up 1 million points. But it does seem like Penn State's defense is like, yes, please, we'll take the awkward running quarterback that we're going to kill him. Georgia couldn't take his head off. They couldn't get a couple good licks on him. Riley Leonard actually felt comfortable. We'll see. We'll see how that plays out on that side of the ball. Let's go on the other side. Drew Aller is headed to the NFL the following year, he said. We'll see if that holds true as things develop over the next couple of months. But he certainly has the prototypical NFL body. He's got a nice arm. I don't love his pocket awareness. And Notre Dame's defense, as JMart and I lamented the other day, is the best in the country. It's really, they're great on defense. The Riley Mills, the defensive lineman, they lost him. It didn't matter. Let's start with Drew Aller, the quarterback. Clayton, why don't you go first since you're leaning Penn State? His numbers are 183.5 passing yards. Not a threat on the ground. It's 10.5 rushing yards. Whenever I see that, though, in a big game, I'm kind of like, especially in the NFL playoffs, let me take the over in the rushing yards because they're going to try their best to move those chains. Talk to me about Drew and Penn State's offense here.
Yeah, I can't say I'm necessarily too confident in him hitting that just because the running backs have been so strong. But like you said, Notre Dame's rush defense and defense in general has just looked like one of the best in the country. So I definitely wouldn't take it just because I'm not super confident in it. But I do think if you look at the weapons, Tyler Warren, I think he's due up for a decently big game. But just because so much of their strength through the past couple of games has been through the run game, I'm just not confident that he'll hit it, even though I think they'll be passing a little bit more.
Jimmer, what do you think? Is Penn State's offensive line in a better position? I know you and I aren't writing any love letters to the Georgia offensive line after their performance because they really got dominated on the biggest play of the game in that first quarter. When Etienne fumbled, partially it's because 3 Notre Dame guys are in the backfield. Then they couldn't block the end to give up the strip sack. Sorry, I'm doing this to you again as you're trying to get over the Georgia game. But how's Penn State's offensive line going to hold up against Notre Dame?
I mean, I'd assume marginally better. They have played a Big Ten schedule. They've played some pretty good defensive lines already, but I don't expect it to be that much better than Georgia's, which is why I do think like Drew Aller's rush yards, probably the safest under the season, just because he's going to get sacked so much that I don't think he's going to have to dig himself out of a pretty decently sized hole just because I do see him taking a couple sacks, a couple tackles for loss. As far as the passing yards, I think they will throw more. One of the big things about Penn State is they don't throw the ball a lot. They really hate to do it. And when they do, you see a lot of big chunk plays, which makes pass attempts always a super fun line with Drew Aller. But I see the line going over, I think. I think they're going to try and throw a little more. I thought Georgia found some open guys a good bit. I thought Stockton threw the ball really well, and I think his yards were incredibly reflective of that when he was able to get time in the pocket. So I can see Aller. I think Aller's 10 times better than Gunnar Stockton is, and I think that he should be able to cover that line even with a more run-focused offense.
So you got Notre Dame, but lean towards the over in the passing yards for the opposing quarterback. Make sure I'm getting this right. Clayton's leaning Penn State, leaning towards the under, though, in Penn State's quarterbacks for his passing yards. So I'm assuming, Clayton, the logic there is the two-headed monster for Penn State, Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, the 2 running backs. Singleton's 62.5 rushing yards and Allen's 58.5 rushing yards. So both are expected to get similar touches. I'm assuming that's where you think the strength is for Penn State.
Definitely. I think Notre Dame will focus a lot on stopping the big runs. Nick Singleton had a really big one in that last game. But if you look at Allen, he had over 100 yards. I think he still had a couple that he broke out for longer gains, but he didn't have any touchdowns. He played exceptionally well in that last game. I think even against a great Notre Dame defense, Allen's line specifically is really affordable.
When I compare Penn State's defense, it makes me think about those great Ravens defenses. we're great right now. And even though Michael Pierce is sitting there, not to make this a Ravens conversation, usually the best way to handle an elite defense is to just run right at them. Don't let them have their 3rd and 7s where they get to cook up all these blitzes. It's really what the Chiefs did to the Ravens last year with Pacheco, just running it up the middle, trying to get the 3rd and 4 from Mahomes. I imagine that that's a similar process here for Penn State. Like we get the 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, and then JMart, the ball goes to this guy is fucking amazing. This Tyler Warren guy, I was cursing his name last week because I felt like if he didn't make that catch in the back of the end zone against Boise State, that maybe it'd be a tighter game. He's really, really good. He's got a weird numbers because he can run the ball a lot, so you can bet his rushing yards. His over for receiving yards is 64.5. Catches is 5.5. I was looking for his rushing yards as I'm going on, but is that where Drew's going to throw the ball? Is there anybody else that he can throw the ball to?
Yeah, I mean, he's got some outside guys that can catch passes, more big play kind of options that are just really good for chunks. But I do think they're just going to script this entire game plan around Tyler Warren. Like, I think you see down numbers against SMU and Boise State probably due to scripting him out of the game in order to just kind of not show their hand. Like they knew going into both those games that these were games they should win by multiple possessions. So if we don't have to throw it to Tyler Warren, if we don't have to show our favorite plays with him, why do it? You're going in against Notre Dame defense that has practiced against Mitch Evans a lot. I think this is where you say, hey, you guys have Mitchell Evans, we have Tyler Warren. This is where he's different. This is where you show the dynamicism that he possesses. I think this is a 100-yard game for him. I see this being a really big one. I don't think Notre Dame has any athlete on defense. This is no disrespect to them, but it's just a testament to how good Tyler Warren is. I don't think they have an athlete that can really hang with him every single down.
So remind me exactly again why you're favoring Notre Dame. Because if you think that Warren's going to be able to get off, you think Drew's passing yards are going to go up, why exactly do you think Notre Dame wins this game?
Because I think that they'll be more clinical on offense. I think you'll see drives with Penn State where they're going to stall out, specifically early. I think they're going to try and run the ball. I think they're going to be, instead of a run-pass team, I think a run kind of team. They're going to waste possessions like that, and I think Notre Dame's better running the football, and I think they're going to show that more, and I think Riley Leonard will ultimately just be a more clinical quarterback like they showed against Georgia. They really finished drives well, scored when they needed to. I see them doing that again. I think it's more Drew Aller playing from behind and just having to throw the ball a little more.
There you go. And Clayton, put a bow on this game, then we'll go to Ohio State, Texas. What do you see the final score being? You like Penn State? Is it super tight? Is it 13-10? Can they get more points than that?
I think they get a few more points than that. I do think it's a low-scoring game. I see it finishing kind of similar to the Georgia game, maybe a little bit closer. I'll take Penn State 24-21.
I was going to say the number's 45.5, and it just feels like it's going to go under on that, but you got it right at the number. And what's your final you got a final score for me, JMart?
I mean, I was going to say 24-21 Notre Dame, but I'll say 24-17, take a risk.
Yeah, I would say tonight's game, definitely a defensive-minded, old school game. Penn State's got it's just fitting for Penn State to get this type of road. They're the team that everybody knew was going to benefit from having the 12 teams in the playoffs. I remember reading before the year starts that if they had this for the past however many years, Penn State would always be in there, but they're never in the Final Four. Here they are, and they're the underdog, and they're probably just as talented as Notre Dame. I'm going to lean Penn State, but I lost enough money on Georgia that I'll need to do that again the following week against Notre Dame. So I will watch this game and stay away from it. We'll get your prop bets out. And if there was any other prop that we just didn't talk about that you guys end up having, we'll put that out there. But I want to do, before you guys roll, we'll do a few more minutes on the game tomorrow night, since we're not going to record it until next week. Tomorrow night's game, it should be great. It really should. There's so many NFL guys out there. Ohio State's big favorites against Texas, kind of similar to the Notre Dame vibe where most people are just leaning towards Ohio State. Kind of hard not to after the past couple of weeks. But for purposes of this pod, I want to rip through the prop bets and see if we have anything that you guys see some value. So first, JMart, I want to start with you. We'll go on Ohio State. When they have the ball, they've been cooking. Obviously, it looks like, am I reading this right, that it's only 225.5 passing yards for Will Howard. That just seems way too low. Texas's defense is great. How do you see Ohio State moving the ball against them?
Yeah, I think he definitely covers that line. That feels kind of disrespectfully low, honestly. I mean, that offense is so hot right now. I know I personally think that if Texas comes out and stops them early, that they are going to struggle a little more on offense, but not 225 passing yards struggle. I think that with Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, big tight end Scott, and you look like Quinshon Judkins as a running back is a great receiving option too. They got too many weapons for that line to not cover. I think we've seen teams pass the ball fairly effectively against Texas in the past. So, yeah, I just feel really confident that he's going to be doing that as well.
Just a quick, I misspoke a drop. So on DraftKings, you can bet on so many different things. So you can bet over 225 passing yards, but it was 250, puts it at minus 20. Do you still have the same feeling? It's only 25 extra passing yards.
Yeah. I think he's going to throw a lot. I think that they're going to trust him. This is the most they've probably trusted Will Howard all season going into this game, and I see no reason for him to just get scripted out for Henderson and Judkins when you can throw the ball to Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah, Clayton, do you agree with that?
Yeah, pretty much. When I was looking at the receiving yards lines for their 2-star receivers, Egbuka and Smith, I was a little skeptical just because those are so high. But they, like Jack was saying, they've got weapons all over the field. So when it comes to Will Howard, I'm very confident that he can hit that line.
And then what about the rushing yards? Judkins, is that how I say his name? Quinshon Judkins. It's at 52.5 rushing yards. And then Henderson is at, for 50 plus, it's minus 105. The way he ran, Henderson's 28, right? The way he ran on that like little toss, I was like, okay, he can play on Sundays. How's Texas going to stop the running back? If I guess I should start by saying if anybody's going to stop Ohio State's running attack, besides Michigan, the way they did at the end of the year, it would be Texas. They're built for it, aren't they, JMart?
Yeah, I think that they're built incredibly well to stop Ohio State. I think they have one of the most talented defensive lines you'll find. And I think they're going to come out ready to prove a point on the defensive line. I see these as two lines that could very easily both go under just simply off game script. I do think Chip Kelly's going to want to throw the ball more. I think you're going to recognize that in this game. I think he's felt really confident throwing the ball. If you go back to that first half against Oregon, they really ran the ball like one or two times. Like they didn't really feel the need to establish a run attack because they had so much confidence in their passing game. I see a very similar approach to this game against Texas.
You feel the same way, Clayton?
Yeah, just about. In those two running back systems, when you've got two really talented running backs, similar lines, in a game like this, it's just hard for me to be really confident in one of them hitting just because it could go either way. I do think one of them definitely has the chance to hit. But like Jack was saying, I think Ohio State's going to come out hot, keep going through the air since that's what's been successful for them in recent games. So while I do think one of those is possible, I wouldn't be confident enough to pick one just because both of those running backs are talented, and I'm not sure who they would go to primarily in this game.
What's the way to stop Ohio? Like, do you blitz Will Howard? Because you blitz him, then I was going to say, then you're dealing with the one-on-ones on the outside. But Ohio State's offensive line has just been dominant these first two games. Tennessee was nowhere near them. Oregon's nowhere near them. You think that's what's going to happen tomorrow night, JMart?
I think it's gotta be a 4-down lineman. You got to run that. You can't send any more because they're gonna feel the blitz and he's gonna find the open guy. You got to make Will Howard make high level reads. You got to cover well enough that he can't get to his first option. Then you got to cover well enough that second option's kind of iffy. And you got to make him go through all those progressions to end up on a receiver because like if you give him the first option every drive, it's gonna be 2-minute drives. They're gonna be scoring pretty quick. You're going to have to make him make a lot of really advanced reads, and he's capable of it at times, but you feel comfortable more when he's throwing to his tight ends and running backs than you do with his receivers.
Yeah, it's almost like when teams rolling like this, like Ohio State, feels like there's just no chance for Texas unless they score first. I mean, the momentum with Ohio State right now is just off the charts. I wonder if that's how Oregon feels. It's like, hey, can we just restart that game? Because once the game got rolling, it was just like game over. Do you think that's what happened, Clayton? Or do you think if Ohio State played Oregon 100 times, they're going to win 90 times? Like, is Ohio State that much better than Oregon? And now are they that much better than Texas?
I do think the momentum definitely played a large role in that last game. I think it's given how Ohio State's playing recently, I do think they win that Oregon game more times than not. If you went back to earlier in the season, I don't think it's the same story. But given them against Texas, how they're playing, it's hard for me to not pick them. Like we were talking about the other day, because I like Ohio State so much here, it's kind of makes me want to pick Texas, but I don't see any opportunity here where Texas comes out with the win unless they get going early.
The only thing I think that gives me some hope with Texas is you really don't want to tell a bunch of 5-stars that they have no chance to win. It's my only fear of the stupid Steelers on Saturday is like, really, we got to be 10-point favorites and no one thinks Steelers are going to win. That's usually like, I don't like telling a bunch of alpha males that have been really successful in life that they have no chance. So for that, I would say Texas, obviously they have a chance. There's a 6-point spread. They do have to score early. They can't put themselves in a position where Ohio State's momentum is still rolling. Where are we at with viewers in this game? Clayton, do you like Quinn Ewers? Because I don't have to ask JMart. I know he's not the biggest fan over there. Where are you at with Quinn Ewers, and specifically in this spot here against Ohio State?
I'm not super huge on Quinn Ewers either. I think you've got to really bring the pressure and make him uncomfortable because we've seen he turns the ball over a good bit for as talented as a quarterback as he is. So I think, especially on these third down plays, obviously Texas still got some very talented receivers, but Ohio State's going to have to bring the pressure, make Quinn Ewers a little bit uncomfortable because that's what's caused him to mess up, throw these picks in the past.
His over, pulling it up now as I'm looking at it. So his at – I really don't love the way DraftKings does this, but on my phone, the way it looks is so Quinn Ewers 250 passing yards is basically even money. They're going to pay you plus 105 to take that. Where you favor the over or under on that, Clayton?
It's a hard line just because I do think Texas will throw the ball more, but I'm going to take the under. I think Ohio State's defense is talented enough to make him mess up a few times, throw him out of his comfort zone. It's so high, like I said, because Texas they're just primarily a passing team. But yeah, I think if you make them uncomfortable, you can definitely prevent that from hitting.
JMart, touch on that, and then touch on Golden and Helm are their two best receivers. Golden 70+ yards is minus 115. Helm at 50+ yards is plus 110. How do you see Texas passing game looking?
I mean, look, it's Dylan Gabriel looked horrible for Oregon against Ohio State last time out, and if it feels weird thinking that Ewers would look any better. I get that there were some outliers, like Tez Johnson got hurt, Evan Stewart were both hurt. Like that's a big deal for Oregon, but it's one of those situations where you got to see how Ewers looks first. Going off 250, I'd feel a lot more confident if you want to take juice and feel like really betting on him. 200, I think he can get 200 yards, but 250 is such a gap. It would require him to be definitely a little good the entire game, which I haven't seen too much of. That being said, I do think that I like Golden a lot this game. I like one receiver specifically because this feels like one of those games that will have like a big chunk play in it, a big passing touchdown from Quinn Ewers that could swing the momentum. The question is, I just don't trust Ewers enough for 4 quarters to really cover that line.
What's the all-star defensive back's name on Ohio State again that takes away half the field?
Caleb Downs.
So the ball's got to go on the other side, right?
And that's the issue with Helm is Downs isn't as big as Helm, but I mean, damn, he can tackle guys like Gunnar Helm, and he's gonna take him primarily out of the game. You're gonna see him I've seen plays where he's basically been covering 2 guys at once. I don't know how he does it, but he's done it. It's gonna be get the ball to where he isn't, and I think it's gonna be a lot more running the ball down their throat a little bit, kind of forcing the run game on it. Because again, Michigan beat them, and Michigan can't throw the football, so there is something there.
I was gonna say the film's there. It's not too long ago. I'm assuming Tennessee and Oregon watched it. But once you're down 14-0, it's like, I guess we're not running the Michigan offense. Wisner, the running back for Texas, 60+ yards for him on the ground is minus 120. They started off by getting more of a 2-headed attack there earlier in the year with Jaden Blue, but he now doesn't get as many carries. His total's at 25 yards. Clayton, is Texas going to have any success running the ball? It feels like that's their only chance.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to if Ohio State is scoring quickly or not, because if you're kind of coming back playing catch up the whole game, you're going to be throwing the ball a lot more. And just given how Ohio State's playing, that's kind of what I expect to happen here. So I'm not confident that Wisner will hit that.
JMart, Texas, they cover the spread, or Ohio State's going to win by 2 touchdowns?
I mean, going into this, I felt like Texas could keep it close, but once you break it down, go prop by prop, it becomes a lot more difficult to see a world where Texas can really keep this game too competitive. That being said, I do like Jaden Blue's rushing total. I think that he's the kind of back you want to have out there against a team like Ohio State. He's a lot more dynamic than Wisner. He did have some fumble issues that got him benched, but 25.5 is really low for a high-level running back that's got a lot of life left in his legs this season. He's seen his carries kind of dwindle as the season went on. I think his legs are still pretty fresh, and Wisner's been going through a bunch of injuries and stuff. So I think Blue will see a bigger bulk of the carries than I think we saw in the past couple weeks, and I think he will be marginally more productive than Wisner.
All right, last one before we roll is Ohio State's defense was dynamic against Oregon because they were playing with the lead. So I'm seeing a ton of confidence. I'm seeing them fly all over the place. I know we touched on the one corner downs, but where can Ohio State be exploited? If we said Texas is going to win this game, 31-20 and surprise everybody, Clayton, what does that look like? Texas was able to just move the ball against them, or Ewers was fantastic?
Well, I think that's mainly coming down to the defensive side. I think they're going to have to stop Ohio State passing the ball and force Ohio State to run, which allows Texas to play more calmly on offense, which would mean they would be running the ball more. So I think if they can control the game defensively, they're going to be able to do more on offense, play a bit more patiently, which will favor Quinn Ewers.
So if I tell you it's 10-10 at halftime, then it's a 50-50 game in the second half. Like if Texas survives that first half, gets the halftime tied up, then it's all about adjustments. Do you think Texas is right there with them, JMart?
If it's tied at halftime, I think Texas wins it outright. I think that Sarkisian is a much better coach than Ryan Day. I think he'll be able to script an offense that will decimate Ohio State if he's able to keep it close at half, because that will allow him to run the ball a lot more, throw a lot less with Ewers. You kind of want in the second half to take the mistake opportunities away from Ewers and kind of give him like about as simplified as the game plan as possible. And if you're able to keep that game close going into half, it shows that you have the ability to kind of dumb the game down a little bit. And then Ewers still has the arm talent to make the big throw when he needs to. I think if you tell Sarkisian he's tied going into half, he'll feel great. He'll feel great about his chances to win that game.
Any home field in that game? It's in the state of Texas, still about 3 hours away from Austin. The game's in Dallas. Ohio State, I feel like, has more fans than anybody else. Do you expect any advantage for Texas?
I mean, yeah. It'd be just being in Texas. Like, they're going to try and sell 50-50 tickets, but just if game's in Texas, like, Texas is going to show up a lot more than Ohio State, just objectively from that.
Clayton, is it enough? What's the final score here tomorrow night?
It's hard to say, but I do think Ohio State comes out hot. I think they can probably win by a couple touchdowns here. I'm going to take Ohio State 38-28.
38-20. That would send the game way over. It's 53.5. Seems like a low number the way Ohio State's scoring. How do you see it playing out, JMart?
Give me like 31-21. I think Texas will keep it fairly close, or like at least stat pad at the end to get the margin a little better. But at the end of the day, I do think we'll see some form of that Ohio State offense we saw against Oregon. And I do think that'll be enough playing against a Texas team that I just don't trust a Texas offense I don't trust to carry their team basically through the air.
So tell me if you guys agree with this, and then we'll get out of here. It seems like if you like Ohio State, the only bet to make is -120 right now for them to win the championship. Like, instead of trying to get them to cover the 6.5, if they're going to beat Texas tomorrow night, then the championship game, they're going to be favored by at least 7 points against Notre Dame or Penn State. So from a gambling standpoint, can you guys poke a hole in this? I would assume that if you like Ohio State to win tomorrow night, just take them to win the whole championship at -120. You put $1,000 on that, and your risk is $1,200. Then you just can automatically hedge it as long as they beat Texas, right? You just take the underdog on the money line, and you would secure yourself profit there. Am I missing something?
I mean, no. I think that's smart betting and stuff. I do think that, like, just if you're just trying to make yourself some money, that's the smart thing. There's no reason to play these points. The points are really high on this game. It can get closed out when you're within a touchdown like that. It doesn't impact how teams play at the end. If Ohio State's beating them by 11 going into the last 3 minutes of the game and Texas scores a garbage touchdown, it screws you out of a bet that you were correct. It was a 2-possession,
And because you get the odds at -120, I would also argue that if you want to bet some NFL games this weekend and you love Ohio State, put them in the 6-point teaser or put them in the parlay with the money line. Just be careful. Even if you love Ohio State, like JMart just said, they could dominate this game and yet still blow the cover at the end. And if you like Penn State or Notre Dame and you really, really like them, bet them to win the championship, because then you'll get really good odds, assuming they play Ohio State. So, all right, well, cool. Appreciate you guys. I just wanted to do all college football today. Do a little bit more NFL tomorrow. Get ready for all these games. So appreciate you guys. Tonight, Notre Dame and Penn State. JMart's got Notre Dame. Clayton is rolling with Penn State. And then tomorrow night, you both got Ohio State. I also, last bit of advice here. If you really want to give the 6 points with Ohio State, do it now, because I imagine it's not going down by the time they kick off tomorrow night. The more you like Ohio State, bet it now. So, all right. Anything else? Are you guys good?
Good.
Yeah, I'm all good.
All right. Well, have a great day. Good luck to everybody tonight on whatever you're doing. And I'll see you guys in the morning.
See you.
You guys.